Hello, and welcome to the Being Human podcast, where we explore what it means to be human, physically, mentally, and spiritually. We upload an episode of this podcast every single week, so whether you're new here or especially if you're returning and you have not yet, make sure to hit that subscribe button. That is the best way you can help support the podcast, and it also ensures you do not miss any of these episodes. On this episode of the podcast, I sat down with Tom Dickinson. Tom Dickinson is the founder of Tom Talks. Tom has an incredibly moving, inspiring, and tragic background story as to why he started Tom Talks. Tom Talks is all about mindset, motivation, and men's mental health, helping men with their mental health, helping men, quite frankly, stay alive, and getting men to a place where they're thriving and fulfilling their purpose in life. Early on in his adult life, Tom lost his brother Liam to suicide. And that was the catalyst for everything Tom does now. Tom shared with me Liam's story, his story. And it's admirable that Tom is able to do so to help and inspire men to better their lives, to better themselves, and to take care of their mental health. We went into everything to do with mindset and mental health in this episode, covering all the aspects from exercise, physical fitness, taking responsibility, how to procure healthy relationships in your life, how to get up from rock bottom. Loads of really good guidance and advice from Tom here. And like I said, it's all set against the backdrop of a really tragic but ultimately inspiring story. I hope you find as much value in it as I did. If you do, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, drop a comment below, share it around on social media, and hit that subscribe button. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure to hit those 5 stars and hit that follow button too. Thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and thank you for supporting Being Human. The Being Human podcast is brought to you by health.com. Health brings you all the best supplements from the best brands across the world. Myself and all of my family have been using Health to shop for our supplements for a number of years, so it's really great to be partnering with them. 2 of my favourite supplements that I currently consume every day that are available at Health are Momentous grass-fed whey protein. I have this with my oats or yogurt early in the morning to get that protein in at the start of the day and post-workout as well. And these ionic magnesium drops from Trace Minerals. I've been starting and ending my day with these every single day. In the morning, it gets me firing, gets the electrolytes I need in my body, and at night, getting your magnesium in is essential for winding down and getting a good night's sleep. If you want to pick up either of these supplements or shop many of the others that are available at Health, you can head to health.com/Aaron Wagley to shop their range and get 10% off of your order. That's health, HEALF.com/Aaron Wagley, ARUNWAGLE, to shop Health supplements and get 10% off your order. And now presenting Being Human with Tom Dickinson. It's a story you've talked about many times before, but to start with, Tom, if you could give us the story behind Tom Talks, not just as it pertains to your own journey and struggles through life, but the journey and the struggles your brother Liam faced as well.
Yeah, so very sadly, my brother Liam passed away from suicide in 2015. It was October the 26th. It was a Monday. And prior to this day, my brother had struggled with a ketamine addiction for probably 4 years prior to that. And it was always something I never understood at the time. I was only 19 myself. My brother was 22 when he passed away. I didn't understand at the time why addiction was addiction. But the more I've done these talks and the more I've worked within the mental health realm and the more I've tried to raise awareness, the more I've started to understand why people struggle with mental illness and why addiction is a thing and why people become addicted to things. And for me, I think my brother was addicted to that drug. He used that as a way to self-medicate, because at that time, obviously for somebody to take their own life, very sadly, they're severely depressed. To which I, at the time, again, would never really understand why was he depressed. So I spoke about my dad. My dad is, a very successful businessman, and we grew up with a lot more than other kids. I'm the youngest of 4, so myself, was Liam, Gemma, and Alex. My dad started one of the businesses that I run now. He started that when he was 28, and within a couple of years, he was doing really well for himself. And the environment that we were in and the circumstance that we had was fantastic. So a lot of people outside looking in would say, like, well, how has somebody in that circumstance become that depressed?
What have you got to be sad about?
Exactly.
Down about?
Exactly. What have you got to be sad about? And at the time, like, I couldn't understand. Like, I used to say to our Liam, like, why do you take this drug every day? I don't get it. It's not sociable. You look like you're off your head. It's just not nice to be around. And I can't understand why you would ever take that drug. And I remember he always used to say to me, it's an escape from reality. So again, going back to that, within that circumstance, why would he want to escape his reality? But like I said, doing this, what I do now for this many years, I've started to uncover and understand different things. And I think it really goes back to when Liam was 16, he was involved in a horrific road accident. So he had a scooter, a moped, and he was coming down the main road, and a car pulled out, and he went straight into the car. And he was in hospital for a long time. He was in an induced coma at one point. He suffered with brain damage. He broke lots of different bones. So with this accident, he had experienced a hell of a lot of trauma. Now, knowing what I know now, I know that going through a lot of trauma can trigger depression or anxiety. And I think that from this accident, it took him a long time to recover, which was frustration for him in itself. But then I think that the trauma from that triggered then a depression. And when he was 18, because the accident wasn't his fault, he got £50,000 in compensation. So at 18 years old, again, looking back now, he's very depressed. He's struggling with all this trauma, all these insecurities. And then he's just been given like almost an unlimited amount of money to fuel this addiction. So again, he used to take ketamine to escape this depressive reality that he was in. Knowing the damage or not knowing the damage it was doing to him, the amount of times that he'd been in hospital because he damaged his liver that much and his kidneys, the amount of pain I used to see him in. I remember me and my mum had to take him to the local GP one morning because he was screaming. He was in that much agony because of the damage that it was doing to his insides from this drug. And even then, he would still continue to take it every day. And at the time, like I said, I was like, why? Why would you want to take?
You think just stop, right?
Yeah. But obviously, it's not as simple as that. And yeah, from the age of 18 to 22, I remember it was a daily occurrence. Apart from, I think it was 6 months, he went to Australia to get away from it, to get away from the environment that he was in. And it was the best decision he made. And in hindsight, it's a wonderful thing. I kind of wish he'd have stayed. Because I rang him a few times and said, you've not been getting on it while you've been out there. He says, no. He was honest. He was like, you can get hold of like MDMA and ecstasy, and I've done that, but not ketamine. You just can't get hold of it. So I was like, right, great, brilliant. And then he came back after 6 months or 9 months. So I think he went in the January, and he came back actually the day before my birthday to surprise me. I remember it was at my dad's, and my dad's like, "Oh, come in the living room. We'll watch TV." And then I came in, and my brother jumped from the sofa and surprised me, which obviously I remember really well. And that night we went to his friends, and he did it that night when he got back, straight back into the same environment, into the same bad habits. And then literally that was in the December 2014. It was the following October that then he took his own life. So yeah, and life is up and down, isn't it? It's a whirlwind of shit, I like to say. It's just how you navigate your way through it. And the mistake I made was when my brother passed away. Sadly, I was the one that found him, and I had to go through that ordeal, and that was awful. And I won't wish it upon anybody. And the mistake that I made was that when he died, I saw how upset my mum was. Out of all my family, my whole family was devastated. Hundreds of people were devastated. He was a very, very loved individual. But my mum, more than anybody, absolutely broke her. And I could see how upset and devastated she was. And I just said, what I'd been through means fuck all. It doesn't matter. Like, I need to be the man and I need to be there, and I need to be strong for my mum. Even though I was 19, I'd just been through all this, losing my brother, and having to face the fact that I was the one that found him and all that sort of stuff. But I just said that was irrelevant. I needed to be the man, and I needed to be strong for my mum. So that's what I did, and I kind of just pushed everything to the back of my head, chose to try and forget about it. I remember I just started working for my dad at the time, and I used that as an opportunity just to make myself that busy that everything else was irrelevant. And don't get me wrong, at the time it served me well because I've done well out of the business, but it was the worst thing I could have done. And I remember it was around 2 years later, it all just hit me like a ton of bricks. Coming up to I think it was either my 21st or my 22nd birthday, and it was coming up to the second anniversary of my brother's passing. There was a lot going on in my life at that time, relationship issues, certain home issues and whatever else, but I really pinpoint the fact that I was really depressed at that point down to the fact that I chose not to deal with what had happened to my brother. And that's why something I'm a big advocate of now is deal with your problems. Don't run away from them. Face what's going on, and as difficult as it may seem, your future self will thank yourself now for dealing with it. Because, like I said, people just don't make the same mistake I did.
Yeah, distractions, as much as they can make you feel better in the present moment, as you said, in the future, at some point, that's what I always say to people, at some point it will come up. And I think, unfortunately, for a lot of people, unfortunately or fortunately, it doesn't come up their whole life until the very end. And, speaking to some people close to the end of their life, people getting older, they start to talk more about their regrets. You start to see them become more emotional, and you realise it's probably the result of them having so many, not even just traumas, just shit through life that they didn't address at the time.
Yeah.
It was easier to focus on their work, focus on, playing football with the lads, whatever it was.
Yeah.
But even if it doesn't, bubble up a year down the line or 2 years down the line, it will at some point, even if it is on that final judgment day.
It's interesting when you speak to people that are at the end of their life in the 80s and 90s, and the regret that they always had is that they didn't do what they wanted to do. And although what happened was absolutely horrific, and it was one of the worst things that ever happened to me, equally I think it was one of the best things that ever happened to me, because life to me now is a blessing. Like, I don't let any opportunity go to waste. Like, I wake up every day, I do what I want to do, I do things on my own time, and I never get to the end of the week and have any regrets. And I know that when I get to the end of my life, I'll also not have any regrets, because I'll live life how I wanted to live it. And I don't think I would have done that if my brother had not done what he'd done, if I'd not been through that. And the best thing for me is, like, I am somebody that is very driven, ambitious, and the businesses are doing really well, but nothing will ever compare to somebody sending me a message and saying, if it wasn't for Tom's talks, I probably wouldn't be here anymore. And again, like I always say, life happens for you and not to you, and you have to find the magic in every moment, because although my brother dying was horrific, if he'd have not done that, somebody down the line wouldn't have said that I would have saved their life. So for me, it's all about using life's adversities and traumas, and if in any way possible you can flip it on its head and turn it into a positive, then you'll have a much better outcome in your life.
How do you make sure you strike the balance between ensuring you're fulfilled in choosing to do what you want to do every day, and ensuring you're still giving other people around you, people you care about, whether it's a girlfriend, boyfriend, your parents, children? How do you strike that balance to ensure that you're not completely selfish but still fulfilling on it? Because that's a difficult balance, right?
No, it's a great
between selfishness and selflessness.
No, it's a great question, and it's something I have struggled with. And my mum, my fiancée Amy, is the best person you'll ever meet. She's so genuine and selfless and kind, and my family love her probably more than they love me, to be fair.
It's usually how it goes.
Yeah, my mum always says to me, you're making sure you're working hard, and that's great, and you're doing really well, Tom, but you're always making time for Amy. But what's been really nice this year is I actually got Amy to leave her job to come work with me full time, because we're going to hopefully have kids in the next couple of years. We're getting married next year, And I wanted to make sure that when we do have kids, there's no stress of her having to go back to work, or all that ordeal of having to leave the baby, or anything like that. So now, again, although I do have commitments, we sort of have the freedom to do whatever we want to do whenever we want to do it, within reason, obviously. So, if she wants to go spend the day with her mum and her sister's got a 2-year-old Leo's, who's great fun, and she can do that. And like one day, if we just want to go for breakfast, we can do, or midweek, if we just want to go for lunch, we can go for lunch. Or we went to Dubai for a 30th birthday. Just there was nobody that we had to answer to, or she had to answer to. She didn't have to book a holiday. So I think that's been really nice this year. Is that, don't get me wrong, and she works incredibly hard for the business, and there is a lot of conversation around work now that we both work together. But it's a difficult balance to get right. But I feel like I'm doing an okay job at it.
Sounds like a great dynamic to have if you can, like you said, if you can strike that balance and do it right. I mean, that's like an ideal scenario in my mind. Like your family, your empire is together, rather than you both having to, she goes to work one place, you go to work another, and then you have to try and come back together and work on family. And
don't get me wrong, I make mistakes. Like the other day, it was quite funny actually. Sometimes we'll just watch Havers tea, and Amy 99% of the time we'll make tea, and we'll just stick the telly on and put a film on. And the other day, I literally, because I eat really quick anyway, I had my tea and then I got my laptop back out. She was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "What do you mean? I've got work to do." She was like, "Can I just sit and have 5 minutes?" So she'll call me out on my shit. But what the funny thing about that is that she asked me a question about work before I got my laptop out. So, but I understood where she was coming from. It is a hard balance to get right, but it's like anything in life. Nothing worth having comes easy, does it?
Yeah. And I actually had this noted down as a question I was going to ask you later in the conversation, but I'll ask it now that we're on the topic. Because I'd picked up on that through your social media, that Amy seems so supportive of your journey and what you do. And I think that's really important. What would you say are the best ways or the most important ways that women can support men in their life in terms of their mental health? Because I think that's so important. We talk about, I'm a big believer in, as a man, you have to operate on the basis that nobody's going to save you. You have to save yourself. But the caveat I give to that is 99 times out of 100, you're going to be blessed enough to have people around you where it isn't just going to be you. It's not just going to rest fully on your shoulders. You're going to have people like a girlfriend. What can women do to best support the man in their life to help their mental health?
Yeah, so what Amy does really well, and this is what I love about her, she's very curious. And her family's the same, her mum and her sister are the same, and she asks me a million questions about everything. She's always trying to get more information out of me. But what I love the most about her, even though sometimes at the time I don't, is that she knows straight away if there is something wrong. Like yesterday, I had a bit of a stressful day. I'd slept rubbish the night before. It was a minor, but you have those days sometimes. And at the end of the day, she was like, "Is everything all right? You don't seem yourself." And I just initially, like we always do, "I'm fine. I'm all right. Just let me be. I'm just tired." And then, like literally 2 minutes later, she's like, "What's wrong?" And then constantly just asking me. So I just told her, I just said, "I've just had a little bit of bad news. It was nothing major. It's been a long day. Da 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 da." And that was that. But I think that's the best way that women can support. It's just not settling for the first answer that you get, because that's what we're very good at as men, is that, "Yeah, I'm fine," when in reality a lot of the time we're not. And I think, again, very sadly, that's why as men we are, the rates of depression and suicide are so high, because we have that stigma where we don't want to accept the fact that we're not okay. We don't want to open up about our feelings. We don't want to cry, or we don't want to be seen to be crying. We have to be the man of the house, and we have to man up, and all those stereotypical things that we are about men. But if somebody can, like my dad, for example, and this is why I love my dad so much. When I was really struggling, it was my dad that was constantly saying to me, "What's wrong? Are you all right?" Until one day I broke down in front of him. So I'd say for women, it would just be don't accept the first answer that you get from a man. Just ask.
Yeah.
Just keep asking.
Don't be afraid to call them out.
Yeah, just call them
Yeah.
out. Just say, like, you look like there's something wrong. Like, just talk to me. And again, it's difficult because we're wired to just want to zip it and not open up. But I think just a little bit more encouragement, and again, that further question down the line. Come on, just talk to me. What's going on? It could help more than people probably realize.
Yeah, like you said, there's that stoic masculine demeanor that I think that we inherently have, that we want to have. And there's a reason for that. Like, from an evolutionary perspective, it serves as well. Like, at the end of the day, we do have to be strong. But part of being strong is knowing when you need to ask for help, knowing when you can't do it all alone. And like I said, 99 times out of 100, there is going to be somebody there in your life. Obviously, it's a terrible situation if there isn't. But when there is, you'll be a fool to push those people away and not let them help you for the sake of wanting to be this strong, independent man.
100%.
Yeah, that's
definitely.
really important.
I think it's the same in a lot of other areas in life as well. It's like, it's not all about business, but just going back to business, it's like the people that succeed the most within business are the ones that aren't afraid to ask for help. Because you can have a CEO that's average at many things and he's fantastic at one thing, but you hire other people to do an excellent job at the things that you're average at, that then leaves you the time to do the thing that you're really good at. And it's something that I feel like I've done relatively well in the last 2 or 3 years, is just not being afraid to say, I don't know the answer to that, and not being afraid to say, I feel like you could probably do a better job than that. I'm really good at that. Let me do that. You do that. And I think that's maybe what's seen the businesses do as well as what they have done. For example, like with Amy, with the business, I was like trying to juggle multiple plates. And I was getting to like 11 o'clock at night, sending quotes to schools for talks or doing invoices. And then you wake up the next day absolutely knackered. And I was like, there's enough income coming in there to support another wage for somebody else. So again, it just goes back to just looking at where can you seek help when you need it.
I think it goes down to trust as well, right? Because a lot of those Lone Ranger businessmen that want to do it all themselves, I think usually the pain point, the key reason why they don't want to hire that other person, because they think
can't do it as well as them.
They can't do it as well as me. I can't trust them to do it the way I would do it. And again, as with business, it's mirrored in our personal lives, in family. You need to be able to trust people to do the job that you want of them, and to look after you as well. You need to be able to trust that other people sometimes know what's best for you, best for the family, best for the business, more than you do sometimes.
Yeah, 100%. It is difficult trusting people, though.
It is.
Not for me personally. Like I've been burnt a couple of times, but I know for a lot of people that I've spoke to, it's hard to trust somebody once you've been burnt by somebody else. And I think that's something that people take for granted sometimes. And again, like it's only been a couple of times for me, and it is what it is. Like I don't hold grudges, but with the people that I've seen, I see them now, I just say, hello, you're all right. I won't trust them again, but just let it go. But yeah, I think for a lot of people, trust is a massive issue. Sometimes justified, but sometimes it goes back to that thing of, just open up. Just
it can come down to your own insecurities a lot of the time. Like oftentimes you won't be willing to trust other people because deep down you don't really trust yourself.
Yeah, I think what my missus said to me again, and she said, she did say you trust people too easily, and I'm like, but for me, I would rather give someone an opportunity with the hopes that it helps them and it builds a relationship, and if they fuck that up, then that's on them. It don't mean anything to me. Like, I don't care. Like, I'd rather give someone an opportunity, and if it works, great, and if it don't, then that's on them. I've got my people, I've got my circle, and I'm quite happy with that. Like, unless it was I've got 3 best friends, and I've got Amy, and I've got my family. Unless they broke my trust, which I know they never would, that's why they're in my circle, that's why they're my best friends, or my people. If you're outside of that, and I give you an opportunity and you break my trust, then I'll just say, well, it's no skin off my back. That's on you, because you could have had a really good relationship within myself. So if you lose that, then I'm not really that bothered. That's on you.
Mm.
So.
what you just said there, I think that's really important. Your circle,
Yeah,
knowing who your circle
yeah, yeah.
is. Is there a way you can form that circle, build that circle, or does it just have to come down to the serendipity of life? Do you just have to wait for those people to come into your life? And
I think, in my opinion, it comes with maturity, comes with a little bit of age, but also it comes with focusing on yourself. So for me, I went through a journey, and there's people that I don't dislike, but there's just people that weren't really on my level of interests and what I wanted to do, and like my humor and stuff that I enjoyed doing. And you just sort of gravitate towards the people that are within your like interests and stuff like that. But I always just tried to focus on like trying to find validation from other people when I was younger, and then I realized that when I started working on myself and stopped focusing on other people, the real people started to gravitate towards me. And I think that's the important message from that is don't find or don't seek validation in other people. Aim to be the best version of you and focus on what you're doing and the energy that you're giving out. And with that, the right people will come to you. And I think for me, it was an age thing. It was like from like, I don't know, 18 to 24, like most people at that age feel a little bit lost, not knowing really who their friends were or good friends were. You think one person and you think, nah, you love doing this, but then you don't. And then I started, like I said, working on myself. And then since 24, I've got a lot of friends, don't get me wrong. I've got a lot of people that I like, but I've got my 3 best friends.
Mm.
And what I found as well is like any free time, apart from a few other people as well that I've got a lot of time for, I only find myself really spending time with them. Like it sounds harsh, but I don't have time for anybody else. Like as you'll probably know, as busy as you are, like life is hectic, and it's Friday night, and I'm just having time to sit down with you. Tomorrow I'm busy. Like if I've got free time, I want to spend it with the people that I really care about. I don't really want to spend it with people that if I see them, great. If I don't, then I don't.
Yeah, because when you get to a certain level of closeness with anybody, there's no longer a filter. Like you no longer have to put effort into that social interaction. The other
Yeah,
social interactions that you have, they can still be healthy,
yeah,
but you've got to put effort in because like you're still trying to show who you are actively because they don't know you. You're still trying to inquire about who they are. But when you've got like a best friend, a romantic partner who you truly know, you don't have to show them who you are. They
It's
know
not
who you
effort.
are. Exactly.
It's
There's
not.
no effort to it.
Yeah,
And that's when it becomes relaxing and enjoyable
yeah.
more.
You can just be your true, authentic self.
Yeah.
For me, there was a quote. It was Ricky Gervais on a series he did on Netflix. It was about his wife who sadly passed away from cancer, and he said, "It's not the things that I used to do with my wife. It was the things that I didn't used to do with her. It was like I used to just sit and do nothing." And I said that quote wrong, but the way that he said it, it was like the people that I love the most, I could sit and do nothing with them all day.
Yeah. Who can you sit in silence with?
Yeah,
Like you can
literally.
talk to people all day long,
Yeah, yeah,
but who can you sit in silence with and not
yeah. Feel
feel like
awkward and feel like you constantly have
yeah,
to make
like you need to
conversation.
say something to?
Yeah,
I think
and
that's really
I think they're
important.
the best relationships. It's the people that you can just sit and do nothing with all day. You just got your feet up, and that's what like me and Amy say this quite often. It's the fact that the best times we spend together is like just sat with his feet up on the sofa watching telly. We might on his phone occasionally watch a film, whatever, but we could sit 24 hours a day together and not get bored and not really have to say that much to each other. And I think those are the most special relationships, and that's how I feel towards my other close friends as well. It's just effortless, and I think when I was younger, I think that's the best way to describe it. When I was younger, I constantly felt like I was having to make lots of effort with people. And then I felt like when I started to really talk about what I was interested in, it didn't really seem to be reciprocated. So I felt like a bit of a numpty. But now when I'm talking to my friends, like everything is reciprocated and it's like a back and forth conversation, and like it's effortless.
Yeah, and I think Jordan Peterson talks about this as well. How like your life at the end of the day is going to be defined by your average day. It's not going to be defined by like your wedding day or like any other kind of, the day where something miraculous happens. Like the quality of your relationship is going to be when you sit, watch TV on a Friday night, when you get downstairs, eat breakfast together every morning. What are those interactions like? Like we think about these, what's the word I'm looking for? These incredible moments that we're going to remember forever. But really, it's the mundane, it's the monotonous that's really actually going to define our life over the course of it. So you should really look at those interactions and see how healthy are they, how comfortable and fulfilled you are in those.
The average perfect day, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Is that the right way? It's the perfect average day.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And that for me as well, like, I know I'm good. Like, I know I'm happy. And I said, because I started working with somebody with Tom's Talks, that's helping with the business, and he asked me, like, write down your perfect average day. And the day that I'd had, I was like, well, that was it. Like, I got up at, I don't know, 5:30, 6, I went to the gym, had a good session, came home, had a coffee, had my breakfast, went to my first meeting, saw somebody that I really liked with another business that we work with, had another meeting, came back, did a bit of work, went home, did a bit more work, spent some time with Amy, spoke to my friends, went to bed. I was like, that's it. Like, don't get much better than that. Like, if I do that for the rest of my life, I'm good.
To go back to Liam, a question I wanted to ask you, and you touched on it already, the fact that you didn't just have to deal with losing him, with him taking his own life. You were the person that found him. And that's obviously another level of trauma. That's something on top of just having to lose somebody so close to you under such horrible circumstances. That's another thing on top of that. If you could talk to me about that and how you've been able to deal with that aspect of the trauma and grief in particular.
I think Tom's Talks, or starting Tom's Talks, helped massively. Speaking about those events, because I go into detail about the night that it happened, and people listening, or some people listening, have been through a similar thing, and knowing that they find some sort of comfortability of knowing that if I can stand up and talk about it and I'm good, then they could also be good at some point as well. That definitely helps. Like when I'm doing the talks that I deliver, the mental health and motivational talks, like it's almost like a therapy in itself for me. Like talking about that and knowing that in some way that might have helped somebody else. Don't get me wrong, like when you were asking me then, like I had the image in my head, and it's something that will live with me for the rest of my life. But it is what it is. I mean, it's almost 10 years ago now. And there's good days and there's bad days, and there's some days where I can't think about anything else other than that. But I think for me, as long as I just focus on myself and control the controllables rather than trying to focus on everything that's out of my control, I'm good.
At any point, have you gone through traditional talk therapy? And if so, how have you found that process?
So when Liam first passed away, I went to therapy, and I'll be honest with you, I hated it.
Yeah.
But that was at the time when I was trying to put everything to the back of my head, and they were asking me to relive this situation. Obviously now I'm quite happy to talk about it, but at the time it was the last thing I wanted to talk about. It was very emotional, very traumatic, and that's the only therapy I've ever had, to be honest. But there was, it was probably about 6 months. So when my dad retired in 2021, myself, my brother and my sister took over, but I took over as the managing director of a business that had just turned over quite a lot of money with 15 staff. So I was only 25 with quite a lot of responsibility. And I think that I handled it well, and we did, the first year we increased the revenue by about 30-40%. So we obviously did something right, but I think there was a lot of pressure there, and I put a lot of pressure on myself, and I know that's something I have to work on. I started to have more of the reoccurring nightmares. So at that point, I was considering going back to therapy, but I'm very, very bad at trying to go out of the way to book something for myself. Like, for example, the doctors. If there's something wrong physically, mentally, I just take fucking ages to ring the doctors, and it ends up being my missus that has to ring them. Not because I don't want to do it. It's just because probably a bit of laziness, to be fair, or there's that many million and one things going on. But therapy is something I'm very open to doing again, because I know that there's significant benefits to it if you get somebody that is compatible with yourself. But yes, so the answer to your question, I did briefly when Liam passed away, but I haven't since. But I'm open to doing it again. I think with everything that I've got going on, with the multiple businesses and stuff, it's probably something I would benefit from. But yeah, not as of yet.
I think therapy falls into the trap that pretty much everything does in this day and age, whereas it's the subject of this polarization. People are either saying like you should be going to therapy, like if you go through trauma, you should be going to therapy, and you've got people that are saying you need to be strong, independent, you don't need therapy, you just need to go to the gym and focus on yourself. And I think the reality is it's dependent on the individual, dependent on the time for that individual and their circumstances. I've personally been to therapy a couple of different points throughout my life. One point was when, so I've got OCD, when I was first diagnosed with OCD at 14 years old. And it was incredibly helpful to not have had that in my life at that time.
What made it helpful for you?
Just having somebody to talk through who I felt was in a certain position of experience to be able to deal with it.
Yeah.
Obviously, like my mum is such a caring person, and she was there for me every step of the way. But when you go and sit in a formal setting, you kind of feel reassured. Okay, like the professionals here. And there's obviously like flaws to that as well, because sometimes you can put trust in professionals that maybe aren't doing the best job they could be. But that's another point. And I think as well, just the age, 14 years old, like we talk about the fact that we're never really independent, even as a man. Well, at 14 years old, you're definitely not independent.
No.
And then, I went to therapy for other issues, more kind of like anger management and general anxiety when I was a bit older. And to be honest, I felt as though I got nothing out of it.
Right.
Whereas on the contrary, I started reading a book called The Daily Stoic every day.
I've heard it's good.
It completely revolutionized my life. And me reading that every day for literally 30 seconds to a minute did far more than therapy.
What was it in the book that you read that helped as much as it has?
I mean, the key... one of the key tenets in the philosophy of Stoicism.
Sorry to interrupt you. Stoicism, is that about controlling the controllables? Have I got that wrong?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Like the key principle in it is to focus on that within your control.
Yeah,
and everything outside of your control, you have to not necessarily do away with, but accept that it's outside of your control.
Yeah, that's something that's really helped me in recent years. Is just don't focus too much on things. Don't focus all on things you can't control. Just focus on the things you can control.
That's the Stoic principle. And I've used the word Stoic a couple of times in this conversation, but that's what the book actually talked about in the introduction. It said the word Stoic has been hijacked in modern times to describe emotionlessness, to describe being detached from your emotions in like a kind of like a really manly, independent way. Whereas to be stoic, what it actually meant was exactly what we've just talked about: recognizing what's in my control, what's outside of my control. That which is outside of my control, I'm not going to let faze me. I have to accept it, and that is what truly being stoic is.
Have you read The Chimp Paradox?
No, I haven't.
There was a part of that book that really resonated, and it was like it gave like a list of things that people say every single day and like what category you fit into. And it was like, if you often find yourself saying, well, it is what it is, there's nothing I can do about it, then you're this kind of person. And then it was like, if something bad happens, you try and find a solution rather than moaning about what's happened. And something else. I was like, fucking hell, that the amount of times I must say in a day, and I say it to the team and the staff here, I was like, well, it is what it is. Like, if there's nothing you can do about it, then what's the point in complaining? And can you control it? But what can you control? I remember once, actually, this will make me laugh, and I probably shouldn't say this, but I will. Summer is the busiest period of our year with school furniture, because schools order the majority of things for the start of September. It's when new builds are done, extensions, and it's just a time when people can get stuff done. So we normally turn over a quarter of our annual revenue in 1 month, which is nuts when you think about it. And it was not the summer just gone, because we learnt a lot from the previous summer, certain mistakes that we made. But I remember sat on a boardroom table upstairs and everyone's stressing and, you know, going out of their mind about things that had gone wrong. And I just sort of slammed the table. I went, fucking hell, are we for real? Like, we're dealing with chairs and tables. Unless somebody's died, let's chill the fuck out. And everyone sort of looked at me and was like, you know what? Yeah, you're actually right. I was like, we're not doctors. We're not working in hospitals. It's chairs and tables for kids, right? Unless somebody's died, let's just chill out a bit.
Yeah, I think that existential picture can be really helpful. I mean, I'm somebody that's wired like 99% of the time I'm thinking existentially rather than like the minute details of what's in front of me, the practical details of what I should be focusing on. So I'm very much like geared towards that anyway. But I think everyone like should have a healthy dose of existentialism where, you know, you have that, you constantly kind of have, you know, on your mental whiteboard, there is life and death. And, you know, everything, most of what I'm dealing with, not just through my day-to-day life, throughout my whole life, is purely within the realm of life. Like, life is going to continue to go on. It's very rare, and unfortunately, like, it still happens, as someone like yourself will know all too well, like, problems will stray into the realm of it is life and death now. But that's where we really need to be emotionally engaged. That's where we really need to be our best selves, put our energy and put our focus and attention to. And the other stuff, like you said, does it fucking matter at the end of the day? No. Most of the time it doesn't.
Yeah. If it doesn't matter, if it won't matter in 5 years, then it's not really that big of a deal right now, is it?
That's another good one.
It said, you know what, there was Chimp Paradox as well. It said that how often do you find yourself driving around and someone cuts you up and you beep the horn and you get really angry? And I was like, yeah, I think most people do, to be fair. And then I read it at a really prevalent time, because after I stopped reading, I was on the way to my first meeting and someone cut me up. And I was like, nah, it's fine.
Yeah.
Like, what's the point in getting angry at that? Like, it just takes up precious energy that's, you know, you've only got so much energy that you can give throughout the day. What's the point in getting angry at some guy or girl or woman that you're never going to see again? And that's something that stuck with me from that book. And it's something that I do, obviously, from time to time, that there's certain things that you know, you can't really take a grasp of it in that moment. But more often than not, I find myself just checking myself and just like, it's not that important. It's not that deep.
I think there's so many philosophical insights to be gained from road rage and just being out on the roads. Because I was driving to Nottingham last night, and I had my foot down a bit, not going ridiculously fast, like going 80. And there was a car in the outside lane in front of me, tootling along. So I gave it a little flash, like politely, just one flash to say, like, move over, you're moving far too slow to be in this lane. And it moved over right away. And I thought, oh, no, it understood, you know, the person inside understood what I was getting at. So I went to put my hand up. And as I went by, they are like completely seething at what's just happened. And then I go in front and they're flashing their full beam at me multiple times. I just thought,
what to get out of that situation?
Yeah. But what I thought in that moment was like, there's just so many misunderstandings in life.
Yeah,
like, because if both of us weren't in a car, that situation would never have happened.
It's like if you're walking down the street and someone in your age, you say, "Oh, excuse me, can I just get past?" And you say it in a polite way, they're going to be like, "Oh, yeah, that's fine."
Exactly.
But how do you do that in a car?
Yeah, exactly.
It is a misunderstanding. I think that's the best way to put it. But also, sometimes I think, you know, how much of a bad day are you having if that's something that triggers you?
Yeah. But then, you know, I can say I've definitely been in their position before. And it's interesting. It's an interesting look into human nature, because when we're in, you know, these little boxes of metal that are, you know, shooting along the roads, it's not a real human interaction, but we're actually constantly interacting with one another. And it's just interesting to see what happens.
You wouldn't do 99% of the things you do to somebody's face that you would do in a car.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Like, if somebody's 5'2", skinny, 5 stone wet through, and they're in a car, and they saw me in a car, they'd say whatever they want to say. But if they got out, they would think, "Oh fuck, maybe not." But in the car, they'll do whatever they want to do and say whatever they want to say.
And what I always say as well is, like, I don't dance anywhere near like I do, like when I'm in my car. by myself.
Yeah,
Or like
yeah.
with my mates in the
Or
car.
singing.
Yeah, singing, dancing.
Yeah.
Like, who's going to hear it?
Yeah,
Only
yeah.
you and like
Yeah.
like you said, if you've got your best mate in the car or your missus in the car, it's
Yeah.
only you guys that are going to see and hear it. And anyone that does see or hear it, you're gone in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
It takes away that social filter, for better
Mm.
or for worse.
Yeah. But it would be an interesting day if people walked past people and interacted like they did how they do in a car. Because there'd be a lot of conflict.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing. Like internally in your head, you're thinking, "Oh well, I'm not going to see this person again, so I'll get away with saying that." But like it's like you said earlier, if you go to the other side of that, well, I'm not going to see this person again later, so let's just not get angry about the situation because it doesn't serve any purpose whatsoever. And I think that's, in my opinion, I think the problem with society these days is like there's so much anger and negativity, and I think if people took the time to like read the books, like the Chimp Paradox and the Daily Stoic and stuff like that, I think people would be a little bit better off.
Yeah, definitely. On that note, after Liam passed, did you find yourself at any period feeling angry at the world?
Oh yeah. I was angry. Yeah, I remember every time I used to go out and I'd have a drink, I'd end up not always fighting, but just getting into scuffles and just it always seemed to be alcohol that was a thing. Like a lot of people never drink, certain things come out that they wouldn't when they're sober. But I remember for a long time after Liam died, I'd have a drink and I'd either get really, really emotional or I'd get really, really angry. So yeah, that happened quite a lot. Definitely. I think I was angry at him.
Yeah.
Because I was like, why did you let me see that? Why did you do that knowing that I was going to be the one that found you?
Yeah.
Also, why did you do it in the first place? Like you've just left so much devastation behind. I remember the day of his funeral. Was like it was yesterday. There was like 500 people at his funeral, and there was literally people queuing outside the church because they couldn't get in. I was like, if you only knew how many people cared about you, you wouldn't have done it.
What was the process of forgiving him, if you have been able to fully forgive him?
I think, again, knowing what I know now about mental health, and I didn't really understand, not that I didn't believe in it, but I didn't really understand what mental illness was before my brother died. Even when my brother died, I was like, suicide is a thing, depression is a thing, but it wasn't until I was in a dark place. That's when I truly understood what it meant. And I think that's probably when I forgave Liam. So I was like, now I know what it's like to be in that much pain, you want to kill yourself. Obviously, the difference was that I could still have that thing inside of me that realised that if I do it, then Jesus Christ, my family's going to be even more fucked up than they already are. So that was the first thing that stopped me from wanting to take my own life. But then also, luckily, I reached out to certain people and I got the help that I needed, and I started looking after myself. That was the top and bottom of it. I think the reason why I'm in the position that I am today is because I look after myself so much. Like I prioritize my health more than anything. Like that is the first thing I always prioritize, and everything else positive comes as a byproduct. Like 100%.
There's a line in a Dave song. I think it's Psycho, the opening track of his debut album. He says,
Dave the rapper.
Yeah. He says, if you're thinking about doing it, suicide doesn't stop the pain. You're only moving it.
Yeah.
And obviously, there's a whole lot of truth in that. And as you said, in your circumstance, that was enough for you to.
I say that in my talks. I say, there's a saying that when you take your own life, the pain doesn't go away; it just gets passed on to your loved ones.
And another line that you said, which I found really powerful, is that suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem, which I think is so important to acknowledge that whatever you're going through that's making you feel the way you do, it is temporary. There will be an end to it.
I say that life is a series of events, some positive, some negative. But when life is good, embrace every single moment because it's only temporary. But when life is bad, remember it's only temporary. It's not going to last forever.
That's it. It's life. It's a sine wave. It's up and down. Any equilibrium, I always say, it's an illusion of the mind.
And it's like you said earlier, it's like the perfect average day.
Yeah.
It's like I think a lot of people, like probably when I was younger, like most people, when you're early 20s, I used to go out every weekend, get absolutely smashed, do a lot of things that I shouldn't have done, and be on that absolute high for 2 days, and then suffer the consequences for the next 3 or 4 days. Now I'm on a high, or I'm on a less of a high, but for longer periods of time. Do you know what I mean?
Steadier.
And I think that's one of the mistakes as a society that we fall into the trap of. We seek extreme highs for very short periods of time and then suffer consequences for the rest of the time. Whereas if we can find, solace in the mundane of the day to day and not seek such extreme highs with the consequences of such extreme lows, then I think a lot of people would struggle less with their mental health.
I completely agree. I say it all the time, and I always caveat it or preface it with saying I'm fortunate the way I'm wired, the way my brain chemistry is. I'm someone that's quite inherently happy. I find it very easy to be happy. But what I always say is, I don't think like we're meant to be happy. I don't think you should focus on being happy. You should focus on being fulfilled, which is exactly what you just talked about. Fulfillment is this steady keel of, it doesn't matter, doesn't matter what the highs and lows are saying. I'm here. I know who I am. I've got, my habits in place, the relationships in my life that are good. And that is always pretty steady throughout. And that gives me fulfillment. And it goes like anything to like your partner, to women. What I was going to say before when we're on that subject is we think about like, we want this woman that's going to make us feel like the king of the world. Like we're looking for this woman that gives us this high. Like you said, we're always chasing these highs when really okay, like you'll have a great night, you'll have a great weekend, a great day, a great week, whatever. But is that going to last over the course of a lifetime? No, like a woman that makes you feel like that, it's up and down, isn't it? And like if you ended up marrying someone like that, your relationship, you'd tear each other apart, and you see it all the time. You'd end up in divorce, and it would completely ruin you. Like what's good, what feels good in the short term is not always what's going to serve us best, and is what's ultimately going to make us fulfilled in the long term.
And that's the problem again, isn't it, with the society these days, is that everybody is experience short-term gratification, instant validation. Nobody's prepared to delay gratification these days. Whereas if you always choose to do the hard things rather than the easy things, and you always choose to delay gratification wherever you can, obviously, certain instances not so much, but you always live a happier, more fulfilled life as a result. Because again, social media has a big part to play in this. Is that as soon as you go on Instagram, you're hit with dopamine, these bright lights and pretty pictures. Your brain's just going ping, 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 ping. But then your dopamine only lasts so long. When you've been scrolling, especially younger generation. Like I asked the audience in the talks, what's your screen time? Somebody told me 8 hours the other day, and I was like, your brain must be absolutely fried. And there's no wonder why you feel so anxious.
And their brain's not even fully developed.
Yet. No, it's not. So again, we're going on there, and with the likes that you get from photos and everything, people are addicted to that feeling, that instant validation. And that's what's the problem with society. It's that instant validation is so bad for us as human beings naturally, and then the gratification as well that we constantly come across. Again, it's fucking up the brain chemistry that we've got. So social media, as great as it is for sharing a positive message, it answers for a lot of things.
It's taken away a great deal of patience from us. Something I say is that like men, like we used to plan in decades. Like you ask your granddad, like he would think, I'm going to marry this woman. This is my job. Like you didn't used to bounce around from jobs, and like, I think it's good now we've got more flexibility and mobility in life. But you know what I mean? Like you used to think in decades, like have children. I'm saving for when I retire, pension. Like you had patience and you were willing to work at something for a long time without seeing reward and gratification every day, because you knew in the end it was going to pay off. And now like
everybody wants everything straight away.
Exactly. Like we're worried about how many likes and views our TikTok's going to get today.
It's like when people start trying to build a brand online. And again, I fell short a few times. Like I post, I do shit. I post it, do shit. I post, do shit. And then I saw, I think it was Alex Hormozy. He was like, he did a podcast episode 3 times a week for like 3 years. and nothing happened. And then 4 years, everything just blew up.
Chris Williamson.
Was it Chris Williamson? Yeah, he said, didn't he? It took him like 10 years to get to 100,000 subscribers, and then it took him like a year later to get to 1 million.
Yeah.
Or something ridiculous.
But basically, like if you look at a graph, he said like his podcast went that. And it was in like the space of a year or 6 months.
And again, it's like people give up too soon because they expect results too soon. It's like you've got to put the graft in. You've got to put the hard work in. Like, for example, Tom's Talks, been doing it since 2019. It's really only this year that it's took off.
Well, to use me as an example, you just came up on my TikTok feed one day. I didn't know you through anything.
Yeah.
You came up on my TikTok feed, followed you on there, saw a few on Instagram, followed you on there. So like that obviously shows like you came into circulation like in the algorithm this year.
TikTok, for example, like I was posting daily. I mean, TikTok's probably not the best example because the algorithm does definitely support like significant growth quite quickly. Like
it's more intense than the Instagram.
To be fair, on TikTok, I went from like 0 to 100 and I think like 118k in like 18 months.
Well, Instagram. Well, I suppose I'm not really supporting your point, but my Instagram.
No, we're not supporting the point at all.
My Instagram went from 5k to 120k this year.
Wow. Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah, so it just goes to show. Yeah. But I agree, like the TikTok algorithm is definitely like more intense.
Yeah. Like YouTube's probably the best example, and I think I can't remember the exact figure, but I was posting on YouTube for 2 years. Is it 2 years? It's something like that. Posting to YouTube for 2 years. It took me 2 years to get to 1,000 subscribers, and then it took me 2 weeks to get to 2,000. And then probably another 2 weeks to get to 3,000.
Yeah, that's what people say. Like as soon as you crack that 1,000, it tends to.
I had a good couple of guests on the podcast though that really helped. But yeah, it was just consistent. I was trying to post once a week, once every other week. But yeah, again, just going back to the whole point that we were on, it's like the expectations that social media has or perceives is why everybody has zero resilience. Because people expect results overnight, and it's just not the case. There's no such thing as an overnight success story, like social media leads you to believe. Just keep grafting day in, day out, and keep your head down. Surround yourself with good people, control the controllables, focus on yourself, and eventually good things will happen.
And I think that's why it's important as well to do something that truly fulfills you. Because if you're just doing something for the likes, for the views, you'll get burnt out. You won't care about it. You'll quit. And like, so you should, because like there was no actual inherent value in you doing it. You need to do something that actually brings you some level of joy, fulfillment, whatever it is, because that's what's going to keep you going when you're not getting any views, not getting any likes, not getting any validation. And then even when you do get the validation, hopefully you'll be grounded enough in loving what you do to know that even though you've got the validation now, even though, you know, however many followers you've got, that doesn't take away from what you're doing. It doesn't change what you're doing.
The mission.
Exactly. You're still focused on your mission.
Yeah. That's important. It's go back to the reason why. Don't fall short of the reason why. That's really important. And again, something with Tom's Talks is the main mission, the reason why I started it, what I said was, if I can avoid another family going through what we went through, that's the whole point. And that was always something I'll go back to, you know, especially now the brand really sort of taking off and growing. It's something that I've got to stay true to, is the reason why. And obviously there's going to be opportunities that come up, but you've got to really dissect and be particular about who you align yourself with. And I think that's going to be really important, and it's something that a lot of people need to try and do as well, is just stay true to yourself and your reason why, and everything will work out 100%.
To cycle back to something we were talking about a few minutes ago, we talked about the Dave line and how you say it as well, that, you know, the pain isn't going anywhere, it's going onto the people you love. And I said that was enough for you in that circumstance, but clearly it's not always enough for people. And it goes back to, I suppose, again, it goes back to personal fulfillment and taking care of yourself. At the end of the day, we're self-interested beings. And whilst we can be motivated greatly and be given a great amount of strength and power by having people around us that care about us and that we care about, at the end of the day, you've got to put energy into yourself, haven't you? Because when you hit rock bottom, it's going to be a question ultimately at the end of the day, like, do I have like the strength within me? Do I have that reason, that purpose to carry on within me? Like, we need that, right? And that's built into how we live our life every day.
Yeah, again, I think sadly that a lot of people do struggle with their mental health because they feel lost or stuck, and a lot of it comes back to not having a strong enough reason why. You know, very sadly, a lot of people don't have a family, they don't have friends, which breaks my heart. But there's always something or some way that you can find a good enough reason why. You know, there's a lot of people, like, I lost my brother, which was awful, but I know that there's so many people out there that's been given such a worse hand or been dealt such a worse hand than myself. But there's always things that you can control. Again, the stoicism, you've always got a choice. You know, and again, it's about the accountability and the self-awareness. Like, again, a frustrating side to my business is speaking to people that are struggling but take no accountability. Like, nobody's made you feel that way. You feel that way. There's been certain things that have happened in your life that's not in your control, but you're responsible for how you feel. And you're responsible for the actions that you can take every single day and what you can do moving forward that is going to affect how you feel, whether that's negative or positive. But the problem that a lot of people have is that they don't take accountability. It's always someone else's fault. It's always something else that's gone wrong. And once you take accountability for your own life and say, I am in this position because of no one else other than me, then you take back power, you take back control, because you can do what you need to do to take a positive action moving forward.
A metaphor I like to use is, I'm not the director of my life. Whether you feel as though there's a higher power, a god, or not, like, you have to accept you're not the director, even if you believe the director is just merely coincidence, the serendipity of life, fate, destiny, whatever it may be. But I am the lead actor in my life. I'm the star role. And it doesn't matter how the movie's written, I still get to choose how I perform and the performance I put forward in this movie, however it ends up. And for me, that's always been a powerful frame. Like, the movie of your life could be an absolute shit show. You've just got to play your role the best you can.
Yeah, 100%. You're the main character. You're the leading role. You're the star of the show. How do you want to look back at your life and see yourself as the main character in your film, in your life? How do you want that to look? Do you want to be somebody that, you know, blamed everybody else and never did anything in their life, or do you want to be that guy that took accountability and can fuck shit up and did something special? So I know that's what I want. I want to, and I know I will. Like, it's inevitable. I'm going to look back at my life and say I did something pretty special.
Yeah.
And I changed a lot of lives, and I made some small impacts on the world. I just have something inside of me that knows that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Like, there's no self-limiting belief for me. Like, the world is mine, and I'll leave this place a little bit better than I found it.
Yeah. Well, I'll go ahead and correct you to say it's not going to happen. It is very much in the process of happening. I can say that as somebody that's witnessing it from a third-party perspective. The impact is already more than a small one.
Thank you, mate. Appreciate that.
One thing I was going to say as well is, we're talking about finding your purpose, which can be quite cliche, but I think it is so important. What is so devastating is that people that unfortunately take their lives at such a young age, like Liam, is that, like, it's so difficult to know your purpose at such a young age. And it goes back to the situation that young people are in now. I think it's never been more difficult to just be a child.
Yeah.
Like, children don't go to the park and play like they used to.
It's very sad.
Yeah, it is. The world's, I don't think the world's got safer. I think it's got more dangerous.
Yeah.
And I think there's, as much as we talk about, you know, how our life as adults is more difficult than it is, it's definitely worse for children. I mean, you're going into all these schools, you're talking to these kids. What are the main challenges you're finding they are facing? I imagine, right, social media has got to be.
I say social media is the key problem, but it's like for the generation of secondary school kids right now, it's also their parents. So their parents, so you're 26, I'm 28. So the parents of secondary school kids are probably between 30 and 40, maybe a little bit older. It's their generation coming through that's also become lazy, takes no accountability, has no self-awareness, and then that seeks through to the kids. And I'm not a parent, and people probably watching this think, how the hell can he comment if he's not a parent? But I've been around it, I see it. Like, people would rather than have a conversation with the kids or with their newborns. Obviously, you can't have a conversation with a newborn, but it is there. They'd rather stick them in front of a telly, put an iPad in front of their face, and that's been happening now for a long time. So the social skills aren't there. The everything that comes with sitting and having a conversation or encouraging your kids to go outside and play in the fresh air,
playing with them, like
social
dad throwing a
social
rugby
connection,
ball,
social connection with other kids is so more important than sticking an iPad in front of them and saying, yeah, just crack on, or playing on your Xbox. Like, that's personally, in my opinion, part of the problem. And again, social media is the expectations that everybody, but a lot of younger children, younger students, teenagers have on them today to want to have it all figured out, to look a certain way, to act a certain way. It's absolutely ludicrous. And it's down social media. But again, I think a conversation that I have a lot with the teachers before I go in is about the resilience. Like, again, expectations. People think that it happens like that, and it doesn't. So people give up so easy. So there's zero resilience in kids these days, to the point where I was talking to a PE teacher, and it was like, I'll literally say, right, everybody, let's go for a run around the field. Let's get warmed up. Oh, I can't do that. I'm anxious.
Really?
Like, what's anxious about running around the field? I can't do the exam. I'm anxious. It's like, you're not anxious. You're just slightly worried about an exam. Like, you're stressed. Like, that is a normal human emotion. You do not have anxiety. You are just worried about an exam because you want to do well. It's not being worried. You just care. That's the problem.
Yeah.
These are the conversations that I'm having within schools. It's the lack of resilience, being afraid of failing, expectations being far too high, COVID having a massive part to play in it, especially. So 2020 was COVID. So year 11. So again, my maths is probably really wrong here, but like the last 4 or 5 years, the kids that have come through since COVID, the again lack of social interaction.
They had 2 years of like
nobody,
yeah,
which is horrendous for everybody, but especially at that age, like when the brain is maturing, and people are developing and just finding themselves, and to not have that social interaction for such a long time has had horrendous damaging effects. Combine that with social media expectations, the lack of resilience, access to information. That I think that's another problem. It's having too much information. Like social media now and the internet and all these other applications, you have access to so much information. It's a minefield of trying to figure out what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah.
So you try it again. It's like fad diets. It's like people jump on a diet because they've seen some PT tell them to do it. They do it for 4 weeks, and then they've seen another PT that this one's even better. So they jump on that, and then it's a vicious cycle. They get 12 months in and they've made zero progress because of the amount of information that's on there. And one person's better than the other person. This supplement's better than that supplement. And it's like, if you just stick at something for more than 4 to 6 weeks, you probably will see progress. Anything less than that, nothing's really going to happen. And I think that's the problem again with society. It's just a mess.
Yeah.
It's just a mess.
Yeah. I agree, unfortunately. A couple of things touched on: fear of failure, lack of resilience. We talked about not having the patience, just wanting instant gratification. They're the problems. Let's be solution focused. How do we fix it?
Name me one out of the ones that you just said.
Let's start with lack of resilience.
So lack of resilience, that's quite an easy one to say. Choose to do the hard things every single time. Do you want to get up and go to the gym in the morning? No, nobody wants to do it. I never want to do it, but I do it because I know that I'm going to build resilience by doing it. If you do the things you really don't want to do, that builds resilience and energy. So in a perfect average day, if within that day you always choose the more difficult things. That's why I'm a big advocate of cold water therapy, ice baths and cold showers. Never do I ever want to get in an ice bath. Never. If you do, then you're fucking weird. But I do it because I know that I get out of there and I feel accomplished. I've done something I really didn't want to do. Obviously, there's a lot of science behind the dopamine and stuff that's released. But I know if I always choose to do the hard thing rather than the easy thing, when I am actually faced with an actual challenge, I'm going to have so much more resilience to overcome that challenge and so much more energy because I've looked after myself, the foundations, my physical health. I've instilled such positive, sustainable habits that I'm going to have that resilience and that energy. So when I'm faced with a real fucking problem, I'm going to be able to deal with it.
Yeah. Do you know who Andrew Huberman is?
I love him.
Yeah.
So I've learned a lot of things that I've learned from him.
Yeah.
He's a G.
Yeah, oh, I know he really is, and in a way, I think he's kind of almost like the father figure that so many people need. I think like he is for biology what Jordan Peterson has been for psychology in many ways.
Yeah.
But something he's been talking about a lot over the past year is this new area of the brain. Well, it's not a new area.
Exactly what you're going to say.
The AMC.
Yeah.
The anterior mid-cingulate.
It grows
cortex.
when you do hard things.
Yes, yeah. It's the area of the brain that's responsible for you basically being able to do things you do not want to do, and the more you do things you actually do not want to do. We're not talking about like doing something that's hard but you want to do. Something that's hard that you do not want to do. Like you said, like going in an ice bath. It makes it grow like any area of the brain, like the hippocampus for memory or whatever. And it just goes to show like that's the scientific backing for anybody that needs the scientific backing, but it's perfect common sense. Like the more you push into something, the easier it gets. Like the more you need the dough, like the more supple it becomes.
Did you see the reference he made to? And again, I don't. So you know, sometimes I'm not saying I don't believe certain things that he says, but I'm fascinated to see how they did certain studies or where they got certain information for. Like I'm more curious. I'm not saying they're lying. I'm just curious.
Yeah.
And this, you'll see what I'm saying in a second. So they said they came across a brain of a gladiator, and this is where they found that this certain part of this gladiator's brain was massive, and it was the part of the brain that you're just talking about.
Yeah, oh no, I didn't hear that.
But I'm thinking, how the fuck have they got a gladiator's brain?
Yeah, no, likewise, I'm very curious.
Yeah. But again, I'm not saying he's lying, but I'm just like, but it makes sense because gladiators obviously did things every single day that they didn't want to do.
Yeah.
I.e., kill another person. It's not something you want to do. It's probably not something I feel like they were quite satisfied by doing. But they said that this part of the brain was massive.
Yeah.
Which goes back to and supports your what you've just said in terms of if you do things that you don't want to do, this part of the brain grows. So
I think that's a good point to highlight as well. Like the fact that like a gladiator, like you think like a gladiator didn't have fear, anxiety. Like, do you think they just wanted to go and fight a lion every day? Like,
imagine telling that to a fucking kid these days.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like humans, but we haven't evolved much over, if at all, over the past tens of thousands of years. So, like this idea that we're just not who we used to be. Like we are not who we used to be, but that's by nurture. It's not by nature. It's because we've become soft because life is so comfortable, which makes it more difficult, like to be a hard, tough person. But we've got to do it all the same because life is still hard and tough, just in different ways than it used to be. Ways that we're not used to having to deal with, but we've still got to do it.
It's like our grandparents. Like, imagine saying to a kid these days, you've got to go into a bomb shelter for the evening because the Nazis are coming to try and fuck us all up.
Yeah.
Imagine saying that to a kid these days. I mean, she said it to me, I'd absolutely shit myself. But like back in those days, they just got on with it.
Yeah.
There was no like, oh, I've got anxiety, I can't do that. And it's just sad more than anything. And for me, I think that the world would be a much better place if people had the education and the knowledge that doing the hard things, your life will become easier. Then spend as little time on social media as you can. Seek extended gratification, delayed validation, and seek it from the right ways, not the wrong ways. Do things that make you feel good in the long term, not in the moment. And have the mindset that everything's going to be all right. You know, just surround yourself with good people, look after yourself, have that great determination to not give up, and things will work out.
Yeah. I think almost try and make your life as tough as possible,
Yeah.
and you'll be surprised that it actually feels easier.
Yeah, it's like this morning. Again, I'm not a massive drinker. I drink every now and then, but I had a drink at the weekend. It was I went out with my 3 best men for my wedding next year, and obviously we got a bit giddy, got a bit carried away. And this week, the first 2 days, I felt shit. And I didn't, and this is me just being completely transparent. I didn't stick to my habits. I went to the gym, but it was a half-hour session. I didn't do any cold water therapy. I did a cold shower, but for me, an ice bath is significantly different to a cold shower. And then this morning, and then yesterday, the night before, I slept shit. This week's just been a bit shit, to be fair. But this is an anomaly. Like, this is a very rare occasion this happening. But there's no point bullshitting people. I'd rather just be completely
because it happens.
Yeah, because it happens. Like, life's not fucking sunshine and rainbows. This week's been shit, but for my own doing. Like, there's nobody to blame. Like, it was my own fault. But this morning, I woke up at 6. I got to the gym at 6:30. I did a workout. I did a nice bath. And I'm still full of energy, and I could probably go till 12 o'clock tonight. And that just goes to show that the importance of habits and lifestyle and looking after yourself and doing. I didn't wake up this morning and want to go to the gym. Probably I could have quite easily stayed in bed for another hour. I didn't want to get in the ice bath, but I did it, and now the rest of the day has been amazing.
Yeah.
So.
I heard you say, and I think I can't remember if it was Chris Williamson or another podcast I heard it on. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your habits.
You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the depth of your habits.
Yes, yeah.
And the important idea behind that is that, again, it goes back to that perfect average day. Don't look for the big wins. Don't look for the 100%ers. Just look for the 1% better every single day. And also just make sure that you become the best version of yourself every single day. Because life is not like that at all. It doesn't. Nobody's life is like that. Again, like social media leads you to believe in the expectations that it has. Life is like that. But if you look after yourself and you do the right things with the right people, it does go up. But along the way, it's going to go up and down, up and down. But when you go up, yeah, it's great. But what happens when it goes down? That's when it really counts. That's where the hard work starts. But again, if you look after your habits, the foundations, your physical health, you're eating right, you're avoiding drinking too much, drugs, etc., 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 then when this happens, rather than going all the way down there, you only go there because you've got the energy and the resilience, because you always choose to do the hard things, and then you go back up there, and then again, and then again, and then again.
So yeah, talking about habits, once you've got your habits set, that's great. Like, you fall to the depth of your habits, which are at a good elevated position. But when you're starting from rock bottom, when you're in the place where you didn't want to be here anymore, how did you get out of rock bottom? Because I think that's such an important thing. Like, once we're kind of at our nice state of equilibrium, we can find our way back when there's those anomalies of a shit day, a shit week. But when we're looking at a shit day, at the end of a shit week, at the end of a shit month, at the end of a shit year, and we're truly at rock bottom and in a dangerous place, how do we get out of it? How did you get out of it?
So when you're in that position, it's really easy to look really far ahead into the future and see this goal of feeling amazing and feeling really good and not being depressed and not wanting to take your own life. And that's part of the problem. We're looking way too far ahead into the future. It quite often can feel really overwhelming. So then it's like, well, it's going to take so long to get there, I'm not even going to try. When in reality, going back to Stoicism, just focus on today. Right this second, what can you do in this very moment that will have a positive impact? Can you go outside for a 10-minute walk and get outside in the sunshine? Probably, yes. Can you write down 3 or 4 things that you're grateful for? Probably, yes. If you're in that difficult place, somebody's listening, just think to yourself, do you have a roof over your head? Do you have clean water? Do you have food on the table? Probably 99.9% of people are going to say yes. If that is the case, you are in the top 10% of people in the world, period. Something to be grateful for. Appreciate the little things. Can you have a nice, healthy, nutritional meal? Yes. Can you have a glass of clean water? Yes. Again, all these little minute things that we take for granted, rather than, again, so when you wake up in the morning, or if somebody's listening to this, when you go to bed tonight, can you avoid your phone for the last hour of the day to enable yourself to have a better night's sleep? Probably yes. When you wake up in the morning, can you avoid your phone for the first hour? Can you go outside for a walk? Can you have a cold shower? Can you drink clean water? Can you have a nice, healthy meal? The answer to all of those is almost definitely yes. That's where I'd start. Don't focus on this end goal that's so far ahead in the future. Just focus on the here and now and control everything that you can control that will have a positive impact on not only you, but probably all the people around you.
Was there a specific moment you can pinpoint that was the turning point? Or was it very much you're at rock bottom, you're trying to get up, you're falling back down, trying to get up, you're falling back down, and you kind of, stagger your way up? Or did you feel as though, was there a certain day, a certain point where you had some kind of epiphany, some kind of real concrete turning points?
I'd say that the conversation that I had with my dad was definitely a turning point. My dad, we were at a business event and it just went really, really bad. The event was for us to showcase the furniture business to the buyers in schools. And it was really, for me, it was the areas that I covered in sales. And we had this stand and I was really excited. And nobody came to talk to us. It was just a shit event. And my dad could see how upset I was. And that was the moment when he took me up to my brother's memorial bench and we just sat there and I opened up to him and I just, cried my eyes out for a good couple of hours. And it was after that that I'd got this massive weight off my chest and I'd spoke about my problems and I'd opened up about everything and, how much I'd been struggling. And that for me was probably the starting point to getting better and to feeling okay again. And not again from the conversation, it wasn't like I was just magically back together, but that was definitely the starting point for me.
That was a real catalyst.
Yeah, 100%.
Do you feel or believe there is a higher power such as a God and or life after death? And depending on whether you do or not, how does that impact the grief you experience of not having Liam here with you physically anymore?
It's interesting you asked that because I got asked this question the other day with everything that I talk about. I don't believe in God. I would say I am an atheist on that basis, but I do believe that there is a higher power, or there is I think for me, I believe in energy. I just think if you give good out to the world, you'll get good back. I believe in karma. Again, not to cause controversy, but I just think that there is all these different religions out there and they all contradict each other, but there's always that one person, but they all speak differently about different things, and it just, a lot of it just doesn't make any sense to me. But I guess I grew up in a house where I didn't have religious parents, or I did. My mum went to church, but she wasn't somebody that was avidly like you must believe in Jesus and
not
all this
practicing
sort of stuff.
on a day-to-day, like
Yeah,
religiously.
yeah. I guess the answer to that is I think a lot of people seek comfort in knowing that there is a higher power. But for me, I am my own Jesus and God. Like, I just depend on myself. I don't depend on this thing in this. I don't know. It's a weird one for me with religion. Like,
No, that makes sense.
I get that the people like I spoke to a gent the other day on my podcast, and he'd found Jesus, and that really helped him, and that was amazing. And I'm all for that, and I'm glad that that's helped him. And I'm sure he would tell me the reasons why and why it's important to find faith and everything like that. Just for me personally, when you talk about religion and you look at the Bible and certain things that you read, it's just, a lot of it just doesn't make sense. Like, isn't Jesus wasn't actually a Christian, was he? Wasn't he a Jew?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So again, like, for me, that doesn't make sense that there's that millions of people that are Christians, that their person that they look at as this almighty person wasn't actually somebody that was of the same religion as them. So there's a lot of it that just doesn't quite add up and make sense to me. But again, each their own. If that's what you want to do and that's what you find solace and you find fulfillment and happiness, then that's great. But it's just not for me.
Yeah. Would you say you're spiritual, or you wouldn't identify yourself with that word either?
Yeah, I'd say in a way I'm spiritual, because I just think that there is the like if you give good energy, like I always think, like I meet you, you speak really well, you're really friendly, you come across really well on your socials, you give off a good energy, so I attract towards that. But then I meet some people and I just think, nah. And that's what I believe in. I think if you give good energy and you give good out to the world, then you will get it back in some way, shape or form. And if you don't, then karma's a bitch and it'll come get you.
Yeah. Yeah, not to turn the conversation towards a religious note, because that's not really what we're here to talk about. I just thought it was interesting to see how it would impact, whether you thought like you were going to see Liam again, or whether you still felt as though he was by your side in some presence or another.
Yeah.
Or whether if you didn't, whether
certain
that
things
is empowering in its own event.
Yeah,
life is finite, it is mortal.
Yeah, no, I'd like to think that he's there in some capacity, shape or form.
Even if it's just living through you in memory.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a weird one. Yeah, I don't know if there's life after death. I'm not sure. I just know that there's certain things that happen in life, and you just think, nah, that doesn't. Do you know what I mean?
I think what is because I'm someone that's, I always say I'm very religious, but I'm not of any religion. So mum's side of the family is Christian, dad's side of the family is Hindu, and for me, I see that there's a beautiful metaphor which I really like, which is you've got all these fingers pointing at the moon, and everyone's looking at the fingers and rather what they're pointing at. So all these religions, I think, are pointing at the same thing. But I think the problem is with modern religion, it's really got bogged down in dogma, and like you said, people are more concerned with memorizing the Bible or the Quran or whatever it is, and knowing the stories and knowing it word for word, rather than like the principles that originally underpinned it once upon a time, which was look after your neighbour, like you said.
Love that neighbour.
Exactly. Do for others as you would do for yourself. If people could kind of
and I appreciate that.
Yeah. If people could, the whole point of religion should be in service to living a virtuous life. Whereas I think, unfortunately, a lot of people, they're focusing on the religion and not focusing on living a virtuous life. When really, like that's your path to that's your supposed to be your tool. And I think oftentimes, rather than it being a tool, it can be a burden to a lot of people.
I think a lot of people use it as a what's the word now? It's like
virtue signaling.
It's like get off your high horse. Like
it's like being a vegan.
Yeah. Like when you talk to a vegan, because they'll tell you.
Yeah, I do loads of charity work.
It's
like that kind of thing. How can you call me a bad person? Do you not know how much I raised for charity last year?
Yeah. That's that. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. But I think obviously I find a great amount of empowerment and liberation in what I feel like is my experience of knowing there is a higher power.
Are you religious?
Yeah.
Are you Christian?
That's me. I can't say I'm Christian or a Hindu or a Muslim, because for me, like I said, that metaphor is the best way I can describe it.
Okay.
I'm not bothered with following any religious text to the letter. I'm bothered about knowing God, knowing myself, and I believe the godly. We're all made. To go back to energy, we're all made of the same energy at the end of the day. We're all made of the same atoms, the same protons, neutrons. Like if you want to break it down into physics, you can do it that way. Like we're all connected. So I want to know myself, know the world around me, know the people around me. To me, that is knowing God. I always say, like my kind of like motto is find truth, know God, have a blessed day. Because I feel like if you look for truth in your life, that's number one. At the end of the day, like if you're fabricating reality, if the relationships in your life aren't true, if they're based upon lies, like no good, no virtue can come from that. So that's number one. Like look for truth, find truth. Through that, you'll learn. For me, I call that God. Like God for me is everything. It's the world, it's the universe, and it's all of us that are birthed from it. Know God, know yourself, know the world around you. know your neighbor, if you want to say it like that. Know your fellow man, because through looking in your eyes, that's a great mirror for myself. I can learn a great deal from you, and hopefully likewise. And yeah, I think I've kind of gone off on a bit of a tangent, but that's how I think about it. I think people get bogged down in religious texts and memorizing things that were written hundreds, if not thousands, of years ago. When really what this was all for was like the original principle was like live a good life, because whatever you do is gonna come back around to you, and that's the principle that we should be focusing on, I think. Couple of questions to finish. What was the last conversation you had with Liam? And if you could go back, what would you say, if you would say anything other than what you did?
That's that's a deep one. I said some really horrible things to my brother the last moments before he died, because he'd ignored me all day. And then the time after I'd spoke to him, he came home and he was off his head on this drug. And at the time, I was 19. He'd owed me quite a bit of money that I'd lent him to pay drug deals off. I was really, really, really frustrated with his addiction and everything that he put us through as a family. He'd ignored me all day. So I just said I'll not say what I said, but I said some, awful things to him. And, I don't have many regrets in life, but those are things that I do regret, and I will always regret, because that's the last thing I ever said to him. And if I could go back, I'd just say, what do you need to be happy in your reality? Like, why do you feel like you need to take this drug every day? Let's sit down and have a conversation. Let's work out what's really, giving you problems. Like, why do you feel like you're not happy in this reality? Let's break it down and let's find a solution that's not this drug.
I watched a clip of yours. I think it was one of the talks that you gave in a school, and you were talking about what a charismatic guy Liam was. How you'd never think he was depressed. Because he was like the life of the party.
Yeah.
I think you said something like, he'd walk into a room, within 2 minutes he'd have 10 girls' phone numbers. Like, all the lads would love him. Like, if he was still with us, if he was still alive today, and he had been able to conquer his demons, like, do you have an idea of what he would be doing with his life?
It's quite funny you say that, because my mum always used to say when Liam was younger, he'd either end up as Prime Minister or he'd end up dead. Literally.
Yeah.
I think if he'd have conquered his demons and he'd have channeled his energy, I think he'd be super successful. I don't know if he could ever commit to one woman, but that's a different story. And I'd like to think that he'd be running the family business with us, and he was always really good with kids. So it'd be lovely to see what he was like with my nieces and nephews. And it'd just be nice to see him happy in his reality, and not having to succumb to this awful drug every day. It's an interesting question, that, really. What would he be doing now? I think we all worked with my dad at some point, and he was really good at sales, my brother. He'd been charismatic, and he was a really good-looking lad. He was really good with the ladies. So I think he would have excelled in some form of sales role. Probably, again, it would have just come and we'd have ran the business together, although that would have been a fucking nightmare.
Would have been a good reality TV show.
Yeah. And I think, I say, would he settle with one woman? I think eventually he would have done. And it makes, I think the most saddest thing is, and it makes me feel really, really sad, is that I know he would have been an incredible dad. And I know my sister gets really emotional thinking about that, because she always says he would have made the best dad because of how good he was with kids. So yeah, I like to think he would have had a small family of his own. He'd have found the right person for him. He'd have a little family. He'd have been an amazing dad, and I would have probably thought he would be working with us with the family business. As fucking difficult that probably sounds like it might be, four of us trying to run a family business together. But yeah, I just wish he could have found happiness in his own reality.
Well, Tom, it's been the catalyst for everything you're doing. I said it before, what you're doing is incredibly inspirational, and it is even more so with the story that's behind it. Thank you very much. I
No,
think you do.
appreciate
I
it.
think you do. I think you honour Liam's memory in an amazing way every day, and
Thank you,
I
mate.
know you're helping a great many people.
No,
So thank you.
appreciate it, mate. Thank you very much.